If you are absolutely addicted to MMA, then you are watching back-to-back vivisections. My God, what is wrong with you? I just got done doing the UFC Fight Night Hollywood vivisection Machida Romero, and I am now turning around to be joined by Victor Rodriguez and Eddie Mercado, both the Bloody Elbow team members, and we are going to talk about Bellator 139. Really a much more solid Bellator card than I think we've. I would say top to bottom, it's a more fun card than last week. It may not be a better card because the top of that last week card had a bunch of former title holders and title contenders and all that kind of stuff. But this card is actually got people that I recognize and have heard of all the way through the undercard, which is a good sign for people who are just going to be absolutely addicted to watching every fight. If you're watching just main cards, maybe not quite as big a card as last week, but I'm joined by these two to talk our way through it, do some fight picks, some fight odds, all that. Thank you guys for joining me.
Hey, good to be here. I'm really excited for this card. I think that, you know, aside from being huge stars, I think it's going to be a pretty competitive bout. I really think that we might see some showcasing. Hopefully, Joe Schilling, he's always fun. He brings that kickboxing glory style that, always proves for an interesting night. So, I don't know. I think we might see some entertaining bouts, and we see a couple guys hopefully redeem themselves, perhaps in the Bubba Jenkins case. He's actually from Virginia Beach, my hometown. So I'm excited for this card. I think it's going to be real competitive and exciting, to say the least.
Yeah, I was not initially as excited until I really started going up and down the list and seeing some of the guys and also who they were matched up against. That being said, yeah, we're gonna have a considerable amount of meat here to go through, and actually, I propose we change the name of this to the Real Life Drake Mallard and the Mambo Kings, just for the sake of keeping things in the spirit of high standards. But yeah, we're gonna do just fine here. If you're on the fence about watching it, you really might want to give it a second look. It's really gonna be worth your time.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest feature thing we have on this card is, once again, the Bellator's bigger dedication to finding and bringing up regional heavyweight talent. Seems to be a lot of, there's three heavyweight fights on the undercard, all of them featuring, or at least two of them featuring people that are like of some interest as developing talents, and that's something that the Bellator has consistently been much more devoted to than the UFC. So that's an interesting reason to watch the undercard of this one. So with that, let's just jump right in. I'm gonna skip Marcio Navarro versus Cody Carrillo. I don't really care, but we got to give a shout out briefly to Derrick Bohai. I'm not sure. Longtime Bloody Elbow reader, commenter. He's fighting heavyweight on the undercard against Frederick Brown. And I think we're all, no matter what, I don't even care what the matchup looks like. We got to pick him to win.
I was going to pick him just off his nickname alone, Marshmallow. That alone brings back Ghostbuster memories, and No, but seriously, he's a finisher. He doesn't. I don't think he's ever been to a third round, and Frederick Brown might have a suspect chin. So
yeah,
Derrick,
he's definitely a big brawler
for the win. KO.
Yeah, Frederick Brown seems to me like an opponent that is able to get by on toughness, and the problem is that Bohai seems to have shown a better ability to take a hit. Which, at heavyweight, it's asking a lot of some of these guys. But as Eddie mentioned, look, all finishes, 3 TKOs, 3 submissions. He's 4-3 as an amateur, Bohai, I should mention. Very solid game from the top half guard. He's always working his way to either another position or at least softening the guy up with strikes. If the submission is there, he's going to take it. And I very, very much favor him to beat Brown in this one, largely because of the ability to take him down, keep him there, and be able to work from there.
Yeah. All right. Let's not spend too much time on it. Next one I want to talk about is Alex Huddleston, Javy Ayala. That's the next heavyweight fight, and this one's actually a fight that I think one of these guys could really turn into something decent. Mostly Javy Ayala is the guy I'm looking at. He's the kind of diamond in the rough that I think Bellator is searching for when they go out and find these kind of heavyweights. Somebody who is maybe a little out of shape, maybe a little undersized regionally, maybe not fighting up to their potential, but you get them a little money, you get them working consistently, and suddenly they kind of snap together and turn into something better. And now he's got wins over Eryk Prindle, Thiago Santos, and Rafael Butler under his name. And I'm actually interested to see Javy Ayala here.
Yeah, I'm also very interested in seeing him. I think he has a lot of potential. I think that he has underrated footwork too. When you watch him fight, he's always moving constantly. Almost, I mean, not to the degree of Matt Mitrione, but he definitely understands the importance of using his footwork to move around the cage and kind of disrupt whatever momentum or whatever rhythm his opponent might be, trying to generate. Aside from that, he's huge. I mean, he's a really big guy, and it's not all muscle. So there's definitely room to, slim down, which will not only improve his cardio, but it will make him that much more nimble on his feet and that much just quicker all around. And I think that would be a huge problem for the Bellator heavyweight division. And his opponent, I honestly don't know too much about him other than he's huge. I mean, he's a really big guy. He's like 6'7", 5'1", the shaved gorilla. I don't think he has the skill set to get the job done here outside of the skill of being huge. So I got to go with Ayala, probably by submission more than likely.
All right. Here's where I'm gonna have to probably differ here. Huddleston is 5-1 as Eddie just mentioned. He's got one submission win, 3 TKOs. He's also 8-0 as an amateur. All of them were ended by way of finish. He beat Derrick Bohai in previous bouts, both as an amateur and as a professional, once each. And he also beat Gallimore, who's also on this card as well. You're gonna notice there's a lot of fighters that have had opponents in common that are on this card. Huddleston's jiu-jitsu probably doesn't get the it probably hasn't shown as much in his in some of his fights, but it worries me that he might be able to possibly work his way to beat Ayala with something he might not see coming. Ayala's definitely improved by, I don't want to say leaps and bounds, but he has improved in his most recent fights. He's currently 3-0 in Bellator. All of his Bellator fights have ended by finish, and he really has shown that he's becoming a much more complete fighter than when he came in. He's not some sloppy brawler. He can get a little, reckless, but that's really he's tying everything together. Everything is becoming far more concise, and I would favor him unless it goes to the ground and he starts to get careless there.
So you're picking Ayala?
Yes, I am, yes.
Okay. So you threw me with the disagreement.
Well, I'm just saying Huddleston has a better chance than perhaps we're realizing at first glance.
Well, I've seen Huddleston fight a little, and he is a big monolith. And heavyweights, it's a division where anything weird can happen. Like, you never know. Yeah. But I think Ayala is he looks like a guy who is, as he gets in better shape and fights more, he's showing that he's a really great athlete, and that's like the big thing for him. Do we have you guys have any interest in the women's bantamweight bout? Know anything about these women? Vic?
Yes. Bellator has a female division?
Yeah, they are working on establishing at least a 145, and then it looks like this is a 135 bout. So, Vic, what can you tell me about this?
They had that recent 155 bout where one of the fighters came in. I think it was Josette Cotton came in at like 170.
I know.
Yeah. Well, okay. Raza Fiera-san is a French fighter. I believe she's a part of the same team or part of the network that Kongo is with.
Mm.
Very decent ground game. She loves using body lock takedowns, and she seems to fish for submissions a little later on after she's softened her opponents up. Not much video on her. What I have seen so far is a fighter that's actually getting her game together and doing a lot better in terms of, at least trying to get cleaner submission attempts. Fisori, a product out of Hawaii, up-and-coming fighter, 6-1 as an amateur with 2 submissions and 1 TKO. There's not that much fight footage of her out there, but there is footage of her at least training. I can't say too much about her chances of actually, winning or not, but I am interested in seeing this matchup at the very least. It seems like it might deliver.
Anything to add, Eddie?
Not really. I honestly don't know who they are or if they'll even have another fight after this in Bellator. I mean,
yeah, I think the only other thing to notice is that Fisori's only pro bout was with Gladiator Challenge, which that's always a bad place to start. So she was at least, if she wasn't, her manager was trying to make sure she got thrown a softball early on in her career, and that's not a great sign going into. Going up against somebody who's probably not encountering that same kind of treatment.
Right.
Next up, we got another heavyweight bout. This one, too, against a guy that I think I've at least seen a little footage of him regionally looking at some heavyweights. And that's Augusto Sakai, Brazilian heavyweight, undefeated, 7-0, taking on Daniel Gallimore. What do we got here? We got another heavyweight star in the making. Eddie?
Maybe. Let's see. What can you say about Augusto? He's tough, man. He's a tough guy. He's a big guy, 6'4", 265, undefeated, and I feel like he has really deceptively athletic knees for such a big guy. Like, he's really good at getting his knees up there, and he's really good at clinch control. I think he's decent at pushing guys up against the fence, making it ugly, just kind of grinding on them a little bit. And he's got a pretty decent chin. He can take a shot, and he'll keep coming at you. Let's see. He's fighting Daniel Gallimore, who actually lost, as Vic was saying, to what's-his-face, Alex Huddleston. But aside from that, I do actually like his style. He's a big guy. He's pretty aggressive. And this is actually a home fight for him, I believe, which, whenever someone's at home, give them +10 in the heart department, So, Gallimore, he's aggressive, he's got heavy hands. Well, let me not say heavy hands. I feel like saying the heavyweight has heavy hands is a little overdone. But he's definitely coming to bang. And I think I'm going to pick him. I'm going to pick Gallimore just because I feel like he's been there, and I just like his aggressiveness, and I think he'll be able to land a big shot and probably get the finish. Maybe. It's tough.
Vic, sow the seeds of dissension, Vic.
All right, here's what's going to happen. First off, somebody from Bellator is probably in a Puerto Rican's basement right now doing some santeria, praying that this fight does not go to the ground because it's going to stink up the joint. Look, here's what's going to happen, all right? Gallimore is a guy who hits very hard. I mean, he lost to Huddleston, as we mentioned. This is his 3rd fight in Bellator, and he has wins over Frederick Brown and Gazim Salmani, the Albanian psycho. Now, look, he's very heavy with his clinch work. He has some defensive gaps in his striking, which very well may be his undoing. And when the fight hits the ground, he doesn't have that much mobility as far as transitioning from one spot to the next. He seems to sort of keep it in one place and grind on his opponent there. Then he's, able to, whatever happens, if they get stood up, if the round ends and they have to start again standing, whatever happens. He's going to have some trouble here because despite his submission wins, as an amateur at least, he's going to be fighting a guy who hits even harder, who also has some problems with cardio. Augusto Sakai, he at least keeps his hand busy with the jab. He establishes his range. He throws tremendous leg kicks. He does, as Eddie mentioned, his knees are pretty devastating. He's got a very deceptive physique as well, in some parts, but you can tell where it starts to wear on him later on. He seems to sort of slow down. He also has a tendency to back up in straight lines. I don't like that. It's not going to very. It's not. It's he may be made to pay for that at some point, and I don't know if Gallimore is the guy to make him do that. But he does seem to have a better chance than perhaps we might have thought originally. I'm still going to be favoring Sakai, but again, as Jane, as you just mentioned, heavyweight, it's the most, what the hell division. Anything can happen. So definitely want to keep an eye on in terms of incredible action. This is not going to go to a decision.
All right. After that, we've got what looks on paper, at least, to be a very promising middleweight talent, Pablo Villaseca, out of Chile, taking on Bobby Cooper, super duper Bobby Cooper, if I remember correctly. And I don't know, it looks like the classic setup of introducing, a soft intro to the U.S. market for a foreign talent by giving him a regional journeyman that he can beat up on. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd probably have to agree with that. I feel like Pablo, the Chilean southpaw, undefeated, 9-0. I dig his style. He's kind of like this bulldog that'll come bring the kitchen sink at you and try to get you down. And I feel like he has decent guard passing and, not terrible top control. And, I'm excited for him. Anytime you get an undefeated fighter, especially from a place that's not really known for fighters like Chile, who knows? That might be something there. Bobby Super Duper Cooper, aside from having fun saying his name, I'm not sure if he's ready for all this. I think he's just, I don't know. I don't know too much about him. I just don't see it really going his way. It's like a sacrificial lamb kind of situation.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to disagree with that, too. I think Cooper's got a better chance of winning than we might realize again. I mean,
but are you picking him?
You know what? I think I am, actually.
Okay,
I'm going to go for the upset right here. Here's what's going to happen. You got a guy who's 11-6 as an amateur, 11-5 as a pro. Not perhaps the most sterling silver record you might want. 3 submissions, 1 KO. The guy does not finish fights very often. All right, so he's fought for Bellator, RFA, Titan. He trains with former UFC talent Rob Kimmons, and he's got losses on his record to Chidi Njokwani, Jake Lindsay, and Drew Dober, all of them who fought in the UFC. So there's a certain caliber of opponent that he loses to, and that's fine. You got a lanky guy with rather basic kickboxing. He's more than content to stay in guard and work on punishing the guy from there. But he's also got really solid body kicks. And I don't know if Villaseca is going to be able to, with his defensive stand-up, handle that as well. His boxing seems rather basic. His takedowns look a little sloppy, and his cardio, I'm really questioning. I mean, his cardio is somewhat decent so far, but he doesn't seem to have that kind of striking power that would, really give Cooper that many fits. Unless something's changed in the game for either one of these guys, I'm actually going to go with Cooper on this. I'm going to probably put some shekels on that.
All right.
I'm not so sure that Cooper, if he's throwing body kicks, that he can stay on his feet. I think that might be a little foolhardy for him to try that, and it'll end up with him. I think once he's on his back, it might be a wrap.
Well,
we'll see.
All right, I like the disagreement.
Are there odds for this fight?
No, there are no odds outside the main card for the Bellator, as there shouldn't be. I mean, these are these are not fights that are wise betting decisions. Wise men do not bet on Bellator regional MMA undercards or even Bellator undercards.
Well, who the hell is our audience? It's degenerate gamblers.
I know. Okay, so I'm going to skip Aaron Eli, Jameson Sardino, unless somebody's really got a case to make there. And go on to Bubba Jenkins, Joe Wilk. Now, in the same vein, but with a somewhat more proven talent, I got to think, this is definitely a bounce-back fight for Bubba Jenkins.
Yeah, that was tough to watch Bubba Jenkins get choked out the way he did. He's from my hometown, Virginia Beach, so it was definitely tough to watch that. He was sitting there in the guillotine unconscious. You got the guy telling the referee, hey, he's out, and the ref like, hold on. It was just I didn't like it. I didn't like watching it at all. But luckily, who's that, Georgie Karakhanyan?
Yes.
Yeah, who was an excellent grappler, by the way. He's got 6 submissions. And Bubba will be getting a chance for redemption against Joe the Nose Wilk. Joe Wilk, he is a BJJ black belt, and he is a submission artist. He's 18-10. However, most of those, I believe, like 15 of those 18 wins are by submission, which is very impressive. I think someone referred to him as the choke specialist. So there's definitely a path to victory for Joe Wilk here. He's not super athletic. Um, However, I feel like if his best path to victory would be throw caution to the wind, he's probably going to get taken down anyways. So why not blitz Bubba Jenkins, get the takedown, doesn't get the takedown, whatever, but at least try. If he can blitz him out the gate, I think he'll have the best option. Even if he lands on his back, he's better at submissions. He could possibly catch Bubba leaving something exposed or being overzealous or not respecting him enough to where he could actually, secure a submission and get the win here, and it could be a huge upset. Now, realistically speaking, Bubba Jenkins is really a stud, NCAA Division I wrestler at Arizona State. His wrestling is phenomenal. His blast doubles are beautiful. I just feel like he's a little too overzealous with his grappling. He just might not know enough to, maybe I shouldn't stick my neck out there in this certain situation, or, he has some room to grow, and that's the thing. Joe Wilk reached his ceiling. Bubba Jenkins, I don't feel like he's close to his potential yet. And as far as standing goes, he has really rudimentary striking. It's unrefined, but it is athletic enough to not only keep himself out of damage, out of range with his reflexes, which are just enough to not get hit, and his strikes are powerful and explosive enough to force Wilk to respect him. So, he has a lot more ways to win, Bubba Jenkins does, but I see him out-wrestling, working on not getting submitted and imposing his ground game. And so Bubba Jenkins, for the win, probably a TKO, probably the second round.
Okay, that's a pretty bold prediction. Now, here's what's the situation with this particular fight. Now, Bubba Jenkins, we all know, exceptional athlete. 8-2 as a pro, 3 TKOs, 3 submissions. All of his fights have been professional so far. His fight IQ still seems a bit suspect to me. And, I think there may be, and I think, Eddie, you just might have touched on it in some manner of, he seems to have an over-reliance on using his wrestling and his athleticism and thinking that that's going to be, that and maybe some striking will be able to get him through. And it seems like that, I don't know if that's a training thing. I don't know if that's if that's something specifically to him and his mindset. I'm not sure what it is that needs to be addressed, but there is a problem because he does have a wealth of talent and gifts. I mean, he's worked very hard to accomplish what he has so far, but it just doesn't seem to translate as well as we would want in MMA. Now, he does have some losses to LaRue Burley and the Carhanian loss, which we just mentioned. Great top game. He wears his opponents out. I mean, he's just really done. He's done well. Probably not as well we would have wanted to. Now, he's going to be facing a guy who's 18-10. Again, not a great record. Some of his opposition has been more than questionable with records that are not good. He does have two losses to Joe Ellenberger by TKO, and TKO loss to Ricky Musgrave as well. He did beat Josh Huber, another regional veteran, and he is very hittable. He does like establishing the clinch right away and then working from there, drowning his opponents with submission attempts. Problem is, I counted at least 8 guillotine choke wins for this guy. I mean, if Jenkins if he doesn't really get his submission defense together, that's just on guillotine chokes. Remember, that's 15 subs on his record. The rest of them are arm bars and triangles and, whatever. I mean, sticking his finger in your ear, whatever he can. So, would I be surprised if Wilk won? No. Is Bubba Jenkins a safe pick? Absolutely. So, just keep that in mind, I guess, is what I would recommend here. This is going to be fun on the ground, and we'll see what happens from there.
Well, I think, too, it's important to remember that, Karakanyan's a top 15 borderline level talent in his prime right now. Facing Karakanyan is a much different prospect than facing Wilk, who's a regional journeyman probably out of his prime.
Yeah, probably.
That's a tough spot to be. No, he's a regional journeyman in his prime. So maybe we're getting the best Joe Wilk too, but it's Karakanyan's a big step up.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think that's fair to remember. Um, Next up, and this we don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but if anybody's got a feeling for who Gaston Reno is, I know Vic, you said you have a bit of a feeling for who he is. I'm interested in him, and he seems like I've heard his name, but I'm having trouble placing him. So what can
All
you
right.
tell
Well, he's also known as Tim Elliott's striking coach. He's 3-0. He's got two no contests, and 3-0 as an amateur as well with two TKOs. Um, I'm sorry, and one knockout as well. His grappling is basically survival based, and he likes to keep everything standing. He likes to work his clinch game, and he's got decent stand up and pretty good timing. So it's going to be nice to see how far along he's come and how well he's going to do against a guy who's fought on the regional scene like Greg Scott. He's 3-3 as a pro, 7-0 as an amateur with 5 submissions. I'm sorry, 5 submissions in his amateur record, as well as all 3 wins as a pro by submission as well. Very solid Muay Thai as well, and yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is going to be sort of, I guess, an introduction to both guys. Obviously, it seems like something to prime Reno for bigger things, and yeah, I'm still interested in seeing this. This should be great.
Maybe a Joe Schilling fight down the road.
Oh no! Oh no! 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 You don't want that. In fact, I feel bad for the guy who's fighting him, which I guess is up next on the docket. Am I right?
Yeah, no, actually, next up, at least I'm looking at the Tapology card, which may
Oh,
not be
okay.
correct.
No, it usually is.
Yeah, usually
I'd
that's
go by
why
that.
I'm you going by topologies because they're
Okay.
usually better on that kind of thing. So next up, I think, will be Pat Curran, Emmanuel Sanchez,
Mm-hmm.
and um, Emmanuel Sanchez seems like a promising young fighter, but to me, like Bellator, this is classic Strikeforce matchmaking to me because Strikeforce had this way of doing things where you would build up they pick out their stars and they say, okay, this guy's our name, this guy's our talent, this is the guy that we are going to depend on to consistently headline or co-main cards, and then this is another guy that we're going to build up for the purpose of giving our stars showcase fights when they need to rebound. And Emmanuel Sanchez seems like one of those fighters that you build up to showcase somebody like Pat Curran when Pat Curran needs to bounce back.
Mm.
So,
Well, here's the problem with that. This was originally supposed to be Pat Curran versus Goiti Yamauchi.
yeah,
So, due to an injury, unfortunately, Sanchez is now the replacement, and yeah, it's gonna look a lot less. I mean, it is a lot less competitive a matchup. A guy who's 20-7 and who's fought pretty much a who's who of guys both on the regional scene and in Bellator, fighting a guy who's 10-1 as a pro, 3-0 as an amateur. He's a Rufus Sport product. He
yep.
does have a loss against Luis Gonzalez from World Series of Fighting fame, and he just beat Alejandro Villalobos, who's another foreign fighter that they brought into Bellator. Not many notable wins necessarily, and I don't see how he's going to have much of a shot against Pat Curran.
Eddie, you gonna tell me on Pat Curran's decline because he's not looked great lately.
uh, Man, Pat Curran, he's had a lot of fights. He's been around for a minute, and he's fought a lot of really good talent and had some wars. He doesn't really come out and blitz people. You know, he engages in these battles with people, and maybe that's catching up to him. Maybe he's just been fighting at the top of Bellator for so long that, maybe he has lost a step. Maybe he's not exactly top one, top two anymore. And I mean that's okay. There's still plenty of people that he will wax, in my opinion. Is Emmanuel Sanchez one of them? He's a Rufus Sport product, like Vic was saying. He's very, dynamic. He's got a really good left hook, which I like. I like fighters who finish with their left hook. That's always a sign of a proficient striker. Um, his knock, though, is I'm not sure if he's exactly sound in his jiu-jitsu game. When I saw him fight Alejandro Villalobos, He ended up on the ground after throwing a spinning back kick, and he looked like he was just too comfortable, just being on his back. He was doing good controlling the damage, but he wasn't exactly being proactive with getting back to his feet. He was more along the lines of waiting for Villalobos to make a mistake that he could capitalize on. And you can't do that against Pat Curran. I think Pat Curran's a superior grappler in every aspect, as far as Emmanuel Sanchez goes. Even with Sanchez's submission game, training jiu-jitsu here at Lynx Academy in Virginia Beach, our Gracie Combatives course, day one, they stress position over submission, period. And I feel like Sanchez is just a little too overzealous when he goes for his submissions, and that causes him to give up the dominant position. And you cannot do that with Pat Curran. He's too elite. It's just Emmanuel Sanchez needs to keep this fight standing and catch Pat Curran. Maybe try to throw a flashy something he wouldn't expect, because Curran is so technical, especially with his boxing, that I just don't see any openings necessarily for Sanchez to capitalize on. So it's a tough sell for Sanchez. It's a tough sell to see him win here. Curran, he's definitely will beat anyone outside of the top 10 for sure. Are there odds for this fight?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry, I missed out on this one, and this is the only one I missed out. So yes, there are odds on this. The odds are Curran is favored minus 310 to minus 335. Sanchez is an underdog from plus 230 to plus 279, and they're probably only as close as they are because Curran's just not looked great lately.
Yeah, I think those are reasonable odds, I would say. No complaints.
Yeah, and Sanchez, I mean, like his ground game seems like it has the common problems that a lot of Rufus Sport fighters have as they come up and develop. A lot of them are way too willing to play guard and are very aggressive, overly aggressive submission hunters. So.
Right, and another knock on Rufus Sport with their fighters that I'm seeing is zero head movement. I feel like their fighters do not move their head whatsoever. I mean, from the Pettis brothers to Emmanuel Sanchez, they're all hittable. If you can just overcome their footwork, their chin is there to be hit. So that might be.
Yeah, I can understand some of that. I don't think they're nearly as hittable as the MMA standard. I mean, the standard of MMA hittability is like basically hands down, chin out, head up, straight in the air.
The old Irish fisticuffs.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
So I think they're better than that by a long shot. But yeah, I can see some of that definitely. So let's see. Next up, we got Joe Schilling, Hisaki Kato, and I don't know anything about Kato other than he lost to Henrique Shigemoto, who's not a bad developing middleweight. But I have to assume this is, like I say, this is that classic, like, let's get Joe Schilling a win and get him back in the saddle here.
Yeah, for sure. His record's horrible. It's like 2-4 MMA wise, but 4 of his fights were in 2008, and then he took a little break, and now he's doing a new run at MMA. He took out Melvin Manhoff in one of the most exciting fights I've seen lately. I'm high on Joe Schilling. I had the privilege to watch him fight at Glory 19 in Norfolk, Virginia, where on the Verhoeven Zimmerman card, and he put on a showcase. And I believe somewhere around that time there was a bloody elbow report that he got like a mind doctor or something like that, where he's been really working on his mental side of the game, which again is personally the most important aspect of all of combat sports, is the mental side of it. If you're not there mentally, you're not going to be there physically, and it's going to be a long day for you. He's steadily improving, and he's fighting a guy who he should absolutely, smoke check this guy. There's not much on this Kato guy. He seems to be a striker, which plays into Joe Schilling's game. However, if I were Joe Schilling, I would take this opportunity to work on my ground game. I would go in there and I would shoot and I would take him down and I would try to finish using whatever ground tools I have, perfected or, been tweaking lately, because I don't foresee him ever getting an opportunity to work on his ground the way he will in this fight. So hopefully he'll take advantage of that, full advantage of that. TKO on the ground. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we really even need to do this. I mean, come on, man. It's Joe Schilling. Like, look, Kato, the problem I'm having is it's hard enough to find any footage of the guy other than the karate grappling hybrid video that we saw that I think Joe Schilling mentioned recently in an interview. Schilling has, interestingly enough, moved from California to ATT for his MMA training. So, I mean, hopefully that'll help him as far as his grappling woes. Is there really anything else really to do here with this
No,
fight?
if there's not. Okay.
I mean,
we can talk about his beef with Phil Baroni.
Nah, let's not do that, because from what I understand, that got pretty racist and terrible. Let's not do that today. Let's not do that today. No, I'm done. Schilling by a mile. Go home.
All right. Everybody's pushing Schilling. I think that's fair.
Odds?
Next up.
You want to do the odds on that one?
Oh, yeah. They should be wide. Schilling is minus 600. Minus 450 to minus 600. Hisaki Kato is plus 325 to plus 472, which I assume we're not getting into triple digits just because Schilling has proven that he is fully capable of losing MMA fights.
Yeah. That's reasonable, I would think.
Yeah.
No complaints with that.
Next up, we got David Rickles, John Alessio, Caveman coming back after I think he's already got a win after his loss to Fiera over Davy Ramos. And now we're seeing John Alessio again, who I am just shocked that Alessio is still around.
Yeah, I mean, he's been around for a while. He got 37-17. When did this guy start fighting? He started fighting like 2000 or something, right?
1998.
Oh my God! Oh wow! So like Limp Bizkit was still touring Florida when this was happening. That's how long ago. Wow. Yeah. Listen, I kind of feel bad. Alessio is he seems like he really is just past his prime, but it doesn't mean he's shot. Okay, he still has a lot to give. He's still a good fighter. He's still a very savvy veteran. I don't know how he's going to deal with Rickles and his athleticism and his physical advantages, as well as the fact that Rickles is fighting somewhat smarter in some of these fights. He's got 6 submissions, 16-3 as a pro, 6 submissions, 3 TKOs, 1 knockout. Someone does need to explain to him, as someone mentioned on Bloody Elbow, that dinosaurs and people did not live together. This is getting old. Rickles, interestingly enough, he loves triangle chokes. He's got a few wins with that. So if Alessio does get careless, I could very easily see that happening. If not, some sort of other, maybe switching the grip to a Kimura or something like that. This would be a lot of fun on the ground. I think really that's where it should be, since Rickles, I don't know what his I don't like his chances standing against someone whose striking is more polished than Alessio, and he has been knocked out before. He has been finished by standing strikes before. So Rickles loves a dogfight, but again, if it hits the ground, I think it's going to be aces for everyone. It's going to be both better for the audience, as well as giving Rickles not necessarily an advantage, but at least a fair opportunity to win.
Yeah, I think you pretty much nailed it there. I think it's going to be exciting for sure if it hits the ground. I'm not so sure it will hit the ground, though. I'm afraid that this might be one of those, Alessio, he's a severely low volume striker, but he's extremely technical. Like he might throw one jab, but it's going to be a good jab, it's going to be a technical jab, and he's going to be safe when he throws it. So in that respect, you got Dave Rickles, who is more of a volume striker, who's throwing not the most beautiful punches, but they're in bunches, and some will land, and so he's got really good volume, and his pressure's really good. He's constantly coming at you. Is that enough to break Alessio? I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure at all. Can Rickles get the fight to the ground? I'm not so sure on that. Not only that, but I'm not so sure that Alessio will even try to take it to the ground. I think Alessio might be comfortable staying on his feet, keeping him away with the jab, and kind of just trying to counter strike when possible and maybe catch him in the midst of his slop. Because when Rickles is throwing these combos, I mean, it's not his chin is severely exposed. So I could definitely see Alessio catching him in that regards. I don't think that will happen. I think Rickles will actually produce enough volume and stall the fight enough against the fence to where he will win a decision off of just points. I think he's going to outpoint him due to just sheer volume of strikes.
All right. So yeah, I would be really shocked if Alessio's not out of shape. He's not technically a poor fighter, but I'd be pretty surprised if he can just like keep up speed wise and athletically with Rickles at this point. That would be pretty surprising to me for somebody with as much wear and tear on his body as Alessio has. That though brings us to our headline. Czech Kongo, Alexander Volkov.
Oh, are there odds for that?
Oh, yeah. I'm always forgetting the odds.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah, Rickles is the favorite, minus 195 to minus 210. Alessio, the underdog, plus 155 to plus 175, which seems totally right to me.
Yeah.
Absolutely reasonable.
Yes, very, very fair.
All right, now finally, main event, Czech Kongo, Alexander Volkov. I'm going to start out with the odds because I want to get that out of the way, and it's not going to change a lot. It's going to reflect more or less my feelings. Czech Kongo is the underdog from plus 125 to plus 145. Volkov the favorite, minus 152 to minus 165, and I honestly do not have a good read on how this fight's going to go. So, Vic, help me out.
All right, here's first I'm going to let you know what I hope happens, okay? If you remember the fight between Czech Kongo and former Bellator heavyweight champion, or whatever the picture is now for the guy, Vitaly Minakov, one of the very first things that Minakov did when he came out the gate was whack him straight in the nuts. Look, every single time that Czech Kongo fights, somebody's going to get blasted. This time it was him. And Minakov admitted, unfortunately, afterwards, he wasn't very proud of it, but he's like, look, somebody had to set the tone because he's not going to catch me first. I'm not hoping Volkov does this to him. But, I hope he's at least wary of the fact that Kongo is going to cheat at any opportunity he can. The Sean Jordan fight, the grabbing of the shorts, the grabbing of the fence, every fight, mysteriously somebody gets whacked in the gonads. Like, come on, son, really? What are we really doing here? Czech Kongo's 40 years old. He's 22-10 with 2 draws. I mean, he has had some decent wins, but he hasn't really looked like a true superstar in quite some time from beginning to end. It's usually some sort of lull or something underwhelming. Interestingly enough, both fighters are coming off losses. Kongo recently lost to Muhammad Lawal. Volkov lost to Tony Johnson in somewhat of a underwhelming affair. Kongo, I'm just going to look at his Bellator record, in which he's 4-2 with he hasn't really changed much since his UFC days, where he'll grab the guy against the cage, he'll use his clinch heavy, grinding, ugly style, and he doesn't seem interested to stand and trade with guys unless maybe he's worn the person out, or it doesn't really seem like he does much else than that. He doesn't really use much volume anymore, and he doesn't seem to want to change really. We have a guy like Volkov who's got better use of range. He's far younger. He's more unpredictable in terms of his striking. He only has 2 submission wins, but he does have wins over guys like Ibrahim Magomedov, the 2012 version of Rico Rodriguez, which maybe counts. Vinicius Spartan in Bellator, and submission specialist Rich Hale, as well as Blagoy Ivanov, who we finished by submission. He does have a tendency to get out-muscled by some opponents that could be, more, I guess, thicker opponents. But he does make up for that with having really good cardio and having far better precision. So I would have to say, if Volkov fights really, really smart, I can see him finishing Kongo. I really can see that because, especially after that Pat Barry fight, where even though he came back in zombie mode to sleep Pat Barry, his Kongo's chin hasn't been the same since. In fact, I'd probably argue that it hasn't been the same since Frank Mir cracked him and submitted him in that fight. So I definitely go with Volkov here.
Yeah, this one's definitely tough. I think the odds are pretty accurate for the most part. Um, let's see, Volkov, man, where do I begin? Well, for one, he's 6'6", right? So he's real tall. And sometimes you see tall guys who have coordination issues, kind of like Stefan Struve. He's like really tall and he's still somewhat athletic, but there's just that certain goofiness about their style that you can't deny. Like it's just there, and you really see it when people start coming straight at Volkov. He tends to, for one, back straight up, which I do not like. That linear backwards movement, that's going to get him caught. Not only that, but he's been caught, and because of that, he tends to like flinch up and try to block these punches as he's moving straight back. And I think Kongo can overwhelm him with his power and his straight boxing. Not only that, maybe not overwhelm him, but back him up to the fence where Volkov is ass. He cannot have his back to the fence at all, or he'll just hang out there, I don't know why. I don't know what it is, but maybe it's because he's so tall that it's so easy to get under his hips and just keep him there. But he does not do very well. I mean, you can wall install Volkov is the way to beat him if you're not going to overhand right him, Volkov has nasty kicks, and as far as his fight IQ goes, and like Vic was saying about Volkov, if he fights a smart fight, he can get the win and maybe the finish, which is very true. However, I feel like Volkov fighting smart would be him using his range, staying at distance, picking his opponent apart from the outside, which I don't ever recall seeing him do ever, Like he's always – eventually his opponent is going to get up under him and put him against the fence. And Kongo can do that. He's got the wrestling chops now. I feel like if he's improved anywhere, it's been in his wrestling and his willingness to grapple with people. And that actually plays into this fight. I mean, I think that might be the difference. I can see Kongo holding, Volkov against the fence. Is this a 3 or 5 round fight? Does anyone know?
I would assume it's a 3-round
3?
fight.
Yeah, I think if Kongo can maintain the gas tank and just stall out Volkov against the fence, then he will get. I think he'll get the decision win.
All right, I like that dissension, and yeah, that's my problem. Like, I can't quite pick it because I think I could easily see Kongo stealing 2 rounds from Volkov just with physical overwhelming, and then getting maybe shelled in that last round and almost losing it, but still winning the fight.
Yeah.
But I could also, see Volkov coming out and just like landing a big head kick early and just changing the whole fight for the rest of it, all the rest of the way. But, yeah, so I think that wraps up our Bellator Vivisection. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Thank you guys for being back here. You can find Vic on Twitter at Vic M. Rodriguez. You can find Eddie on Twitter at The Eddie Mercado.
That's right. Don't forget to give us a like on YouTube.
There you go.
Boom.
Good looking
Subscribe
out.
to the channel. Read Bloody Elbow.
That's right. All that good stuff. And we got the prospectus coming. We got a Care Don't Care video coming. We got 6th round and all sorts of good stuff. And then all the next videos for the next week and all that. So stay tuned, everyone. We'll be right back.
Thanks for having me.